It was, with so very, very well done. And as you know, in Germany, there are so many good electronic musicians, man. There's a lot of very good people, especially in Berlin, playing very good music, man. Are you guys planning on? Are you guys working like in a new record, have some new tracks that you want to release in the summer? Is that the plan?
Oh, no, 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 no. I think at the moment, I've just been finishing stuff for the past long time.
Yeah.
So I haven't really started anything yet. So yeah, the Kausasui album that came out like in fall last year, that was a really big project.
Yeah.
Eight Fragments of an Illusion, of course, a really big project for me. And there's a new Billow Observatory album being pressed at the moment. But since all the vinyl factories are operating so slowly at the moment, I think that's going to be like an October release. So
Right.
for me, it's almost like a clean slate. It's like the first time in a very long time that I'm not in the process of working on several albums. So
Yeah.
that's very new for me.
And then what about the Ulrich? You are not only doing your own stuff, but you're working with other artists, right? As a record engineer and mixing, and right?
Yeah, well, it's kind of similar for me. I mean, at least sort of at the moment, what was really good, ironically, actually, about the lockdown is that it also gave me the opportunity for the first time in many years, maybe to catch up with my to-do list. And yeah, the first result of that was that we finished, that Jonas and I finished that album, and then I've done 2 records so far with a friend from Northern England, Mark Peters, and we finished like a third collaborative album, which I think is now scheduled for early autumn release. And yeah, and there's another collaborative project that I've nearly finished. And I mean, eventually, I'd really like to make some more progress with new solo stuff as well that I've been also working on for a while now. And then every now and then, like smaller things pop up as well. Like I do a bit of music for advertising sometimes, or remixes, and yeah. So, but yeah, I think the good thing is really that I feel like for the first time, maybe in almost like 10 years at the moment, I'm sort of like on an okay level, and not like running after like a mountain of tasks, and I'm always like thinking, oh, how on earth am I gonna finish or that? So that's quite good.
And people like me sending email to artists, right? Can we do an interview? You're very busy as it is, man. So on top of that, looking your life and emails and different people that want to collaborate with you guys, it's like a never ending.
Yeah, I'm not quite
list
sure.
is growing and growing.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's an age thing or something, but I do realize that like 20 years ago, I was a lot better sort of handling different things at the same time. So like 20 years ago, it was a lot easier for me to sort of being reasonably reliable, responding to emails as well. Nowadays, I often feel like in order to mix a record or finish music, I need to just completely sort of shut down and concentrate on that. And I find it sometimes really hard to then switch into office mode, you know, and
Sure.
just answer emails. I don't know why that is. It's weird. It certainly wasn't like that. Yeah, quite some time ago. But yeah, that's how I feel like at the moment, at least. I think yeah. So I think at some point I just want to try to have a longer actual break as well. Like maybe I just need to sort of recharge my battery in general a bit, so that I I don't get I don't know, exhausted or stressed out so easily. Maybe that's the thing. Also, I think I've never actually been on like a proper holiday in my whole life. So that's kind of like something that I definitely want to do at some point. You know, just like go away for 2 weeks, maybe with a big pile of books and just read, and no computer and
no phone, no computer, nothing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's something that I'd really like to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ulrich, you should do like what totally normal people are doing, and go to Ibiza for 2 weeks and just drink alcohol and do stupid things. I think that.
Yeah, we talked about this before. I think if we could settle on a compromise of going to Bornholm rather than Ibiza, then I'd be totally in for that.
Where's the other place? No, Ibiza. Where's the other place?
Bornholm is like a Danish island in the Baltic Sea, and there's like 2 or 3 very specific things about it. Like, first of all, it's got like one of the finest sand in the world. Like, you know, that the sand that is being used for these clocks, you know, like where the sand runs from the bottom, runs from the top down to the bottom. Like some of that sand is sourced there. And also it's within the Gulf Stream. So despite the fact that it's in Northern Europe, it has like a very, very mild, very, very nice, comfortable climate the whole year through. So it's always like between 16 and 24 degrees. So never too hot, never too cold, and very, very pleasant.
Yeah, a lot of several, actually, now that you mentioned Ibiza, I have talked to several kind of electronic musician guys. They go on vacation to Ibiza, or they have house on Ibiza. It's kind of very famous spot for electronic people there, man.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
Michael Honing and the other one that he,
true,
Peter Michael Hamill. Both. Oh, Claudia, we'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. I'm with my family in Ibiza or whatever, or going to Ibiza or coming back, and it's a fame, you know, for the electronic people, electronic musicians. It's a favorite spot, man, to go down there, man. So I only have another question. So where you guys, for the audience, where they can feel free to mention Jonas, the website, and then Ulrich, where the people can buy and listen to your music.
Oh, I don't know for Ulrich, but they should check out the Azura Vista Records Bandcamp.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty stocked at the moment. You can still find a bunch of CD and vinyl there. I don't really have a proper website for what I do besides that. So that would be my main recommendation.
Yeah.
For people to check out.
And then, are you guys doing well in? You get revenues from Spotify and Bandcamp. You guys do much better, right? Yeah. Spotify, I think you need like 1 million hits to get $10 or something.
The thing is, like, Bandcamp is, I don't know, it's probably a little bit overrated how many sales you're generating on Bandcamp. I mean, it's the numbers are quite small, but of course they're paying better per sale than Spotify does per stream. But obviously you're getting much more streams on Apple Music or Spotify or whatever compared to the amount of sales on Bandcamp. So yeah, you can't really compare those two. They're completely different things.
I think with the Spotify discussion, it always depends on what aspect of it you're looking at, and I think sometimes people confuse things a bit. So, like, for instance, when some musicians complain that they don't get any money or not enough money from Spotify streams, and there's some people out there who say, why are you moaning all the time? There is actually income derived from Spotify. And I think that the misunderstanding is, I think if you just see it as a thing of its own, then there is nowadays more income coming from Spotify than it used to be the case like a couple of years ago, because I think it is correct that the rates actually have gone up. However, I think the problem is also, if you look at the bigger picture a bit, is that initially the hope and the promise was to musicians that something like Spotify could, at least to a degree, compensate a little for the loss of CD and record vinyl sales. And obviously, if you look at it that way, even though the rates may have increased a little, it's really just a drop of water on a hot stone. So yeah, it depends on which aspect you're discussing. I think I'm still hoping that maybe eventually, like a way will appear how streaming can be done, where the income distribution is a little bit more in favor of musicians, and yeah, like I said, helps a little bit more effectively compensating for the collapse of income from physical product sales. But yeah, I think that's probably still going to take a long time, and it's going to be a stony road, because there's lots of conflicting interests involved. I think if that's not a conspiracy theory, I've read that major record labels hold, or some major record labels hold, big shares in Spotify, which obviously is going to make it very unlikely that, at least when it comes to that platform, the rates are going to be adjusted in favor of musicians. Also, I mean, that's the musicians' fault as well. Like, musicians are notoriously bad organized, and I'm not really used to this idea of like uniting as a pressure group and fighting for common interests. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, there's errors, problems, mistakes on everyone's behalf as well. No? And I mean, that's probably, I don't know if any musicians are listening to this. I always think that's, in our times, that's probably the most important lesson to learn. No? But like without sort of overcoming this sort of like very competitive attitude and readjusting ourselves to the idea that even though you may think that your band is better than someone else's band, it's still a good idea to overcome that and to fight with that other band together for a generally better situation for musicians. It's going to be very, very tough and very unlikely that battle can be won.
Yeah, yeah. But the other thing in Spotify, you get a lot of exposure, right? People like me, right, go to Spotify to look for band, to look for new bands, to listen to your music, right? And then hopefully that will, if the people that didn't know Ulrich and didn't know Jonas can go to, I don't know, Amazon or Bandcamp and then buy your music, and then,
yeah,
kind of
that's true.
Advertising where people can buy it. I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah,
but
that's totally true. And I've been hearing that argument always and constantly ever since the whole internet thing started. I would say, though, I think it needs to be approached with a little bit of caution, because as you just outlined, like, exposure is nice and good, but it only really helps you surviving as a musician if it actually leads to that second step that you just described, that people actually then go to Amazon and buy something there. And I think what we shouldn't underestimate as well is that there's a bit of a generational problem. Like, people at my age or at your age, I think that they're still quite likely to do that, but I think there's now at least two generations after us who've grown up in a way where that step is not necessarily connected to the exposure thing, and they may like something and stream it on Spotify all the time, but that's where it stops as well. It doesn't lead to a situation where they think like, oh, I want to own that particular piece of music, not even an MP3, just totally totally leaving it to streaming is actually fine. And in a way that if that's the reality of the way how things are, I do accept that. I don't think it helps much if I'd be moaning about that the whole time. But that's what I was trying to say earlier on. If it is that way, then we just have to come up with a new model as well of ensuring that you can actually earn an at least like somehow sufficient income from making music, because I think otherwise in like 20-30 years time we'll have like a musical landscape where there will be only people doing this for a living who can do it because they can afford it as a luxury thing, and I think that would be a shame, because I think there's obviously a lot of talent also among musicians who did not grow up in rich families, in rich countries or whatever. And if we lose all those voices, that would be a big shame. I mean, I can see that in London already, like if I go to like those quarters of the cities where you would expect that musicians are hanging out, like the overall demographic nowadays is very different than to 15 years ago. Like 15 years ago, you probably had like the son of a dentist or lawyer from South London, but you also had the daughter of like a working class family from Leeds or whatever. And that has narrowed a lot more. And I think we just have to be aware of that consequence, because I mean, obviously, coming from a rich background doesn't mean that you're more talented than someone who's coming from a poor background, and therefore I don't think that's a very good selection criteria. No? So.
Well, there's many venues, and I'm quite sure that in Denmark too, and in London too, in the poor areas. If you are good at what you do, it will be difficult at the beginning, right? Because you don't have a record label, nobody knows your dad, and so, or your mom. But if you are good, I think it will eventually you will get a break, and then you will be able to, release a record, tour, start playing in a little cafe, and then from there a small theater, and then, take it from there. I suppose, the world will be very unpredictable if only the rich people have opportunity.
I understand your point, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. I mean, if we're talking about like mainstream pop music, for instance, I think that'll always be possible, because even with the internet, that market is big enough to create. If you have a successful record, it'll create enough revenue as that it is like a profitable thing to do. But if we're talking about niche genres, let's say like 20 years ago, like a successful or reasonably successful electronica album was probably something that sold, let's say like 60, 80, 100,000 copies worldwide. Nowadays, I think could probably say that say like if you sell 3,000-4,000 copies worldwide, that's already a pretty good result. And the problem with that is then even if you have a success in one of those niche genres, it's just not enough, because that market is not big enough as that it creates enough income to sustain that whole thing. So I mean, there's some genres are hit even a lot harder, even like let's say like more experimental genres of like dance music, like drum and bass, for instance. If it is a success there to sell like 500, 600, 700 vinyl records, and that's actually a successful record, that simply means that, yeah, it's well and good to be successful. But if being successful means that you're still not earning any money from it, it will also mean that regardless of how talented you are, sooner or later you'll have to start thinking, well, I probably have to get a proper job now.
Go to school, and yeah.
And it's like that in many of those niche genres, no? And I think that's the main problem that I see. That going back to the beginning, that mechanism of like thinking that exposure leads to becoming well known or famous or whatever, and that then again leads to a respective level of income. That chain doesn't work anymore, and it may not create big problems in areas like mainstream pop music, R&B, or hip hop or whatever, but because those markets are so big that even if you only have 10% of that market left, it's still enough to feed a lot of all those mouths. But if you're talking about genres which were already small genres, and if you reduce that to 10%, then it just means even if you have a hit record in that genre, it's just not enough. No,
I understand, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Well, that's at least on the radios, right? What I try to do, right? All my radios are free, and I have a radio just dedicated to electronic music, so. And I try to do that. I pay for every server for the music. I still buy a lot of music from different artists all over the world, and I'm playing very good music for free, where people can, listen very good music 24 hours a day, no advertising, no social media, nothing. You can, you go to electronic music, you can listen to Jonas music, Ulrich music, the collaboration that Ulrich did with Torsten, Tangerine Dream, and so on and so forth. It's a lot, and it's free for the listener 24 hours. I don't charge anything. And because I like to buy physical things, I still buy a lot of music.
Yeah. But that's what I was trying to say. I think we're different generations as well. And I'm also, and maybe I should clarify this to avoid misunderstandings. I'm not talking so much about myself. I consider myself very lucky because I'm doing okay, and I mean, at least as far as I can look into the future, maybe like the next 2 or 3 years, I think I'm gonna be all right, But I'm more thinking about people like me that are now like 20 years old and that are starting this, and I kind of wonder how they are gonna be able to start and even more importantly, maintain careers in a niche genre. And I already know examples of like very talented people who are sort of like 23, 25, 27 years old now. And some of them are giving up, because I was really lucky in the way that I started at a point when things hadn't gone so bad already. I'm still sort of like benefiting from the days of faraway trains and isolated place a lot as well. But I do know if I would have started that whole journey now, it would have been a lot more difficult. No? And I think eventually we will have to think about ways how we can ensure that there is like some kind of sustainable future for people from those younger generations as well, because otherwise we're just going to lose a lot of great music, and that'd be a shame.
I totally agree with Ulrich, because like a lot of the young people now that are super talented and they're very dedicated to what they do, but I don't think for them, if you're 20 years old today or you're 25, for them it's not really an option to go deeply into like composing or recording, or all the other aspects, like become a really good recording engineer working in studios. You're not going to go down that road today. 20 years ago, when I was like in my late teens, that still seemed like a viable option to go into doing music seriously. And I'm talking about all the aspects of doing music. It still seemed like a viable option to get into electronic music, for example, and take that seriously, or get into studio production or whatever. I mean, the young people today, I don't think for them it's really something they would even consider doing like professionally, or like dedicate themselves to on the same level, because I think for them it can only be a hobby, something to spend their time on when they're done with all the important stuff in their lives. So I totally agree with Ulrich on this aspect, because I think it's such a shame that it doesn't seem like a viable option for young people today to really get into it to that degree.
Yeah, the young people, I suppose, they will need to go to school or get a job, and then kind of do music part-time on the side when they have time, because they know that they are not going to make a living.
Exactly.
And I think that's a shame, not because I'm lazy or something, and I don't know, I'm thinking like, I don't want to get a job, and but it's much more because I think making music and sort of becoming better at it and developing hopefully something like a unique voice as well. It just requires time. Like, time really is the main thing here. I've never needed much money, and I never wanted much money even. But what I always wanted, though, and that was always my main concern about being forced to have like a normal job on the side, is that it just would take so much time, and I knew that if I wouldn't be in a position to dedicate all that time to making music and becoming better at it, then that would seriously harm my sort of like creative development as well. And that's something that really saddens me when I see people who are quite similar to me, but like 15, 20 years younger, and it's just very clear at the moment that they will, despite the fact, even though that their stuff may be popular, but because of the economic situation, they will not be granted a situation in which they can develop their skills and their ideas as far as they would want to.
Got you, man. That was a very, very interesting conversation. I'm quite sure that we can do like a part 2, part 3, part 4, and talk about music, which I love it, and
actually, maybe one. Sorry, I don't want to waffle on too much. But,
yeah, no, it's okay.
But just it goes actually back to something that you described. You talked about Berlin at several points having been something a little bit like the capital of electronic music.
Yeah.
Why was that the case? Was the case because after World War II, Berlin was a completely fucked up city economically. Also because it was divided, which meant there were like no major industries, hardly any proper jobs. And it was basically a city in which only very old people lived who didn't want to move away anymore after having spent their whole life there, and loads of very, very young people. And that's why the rents, for instance, were super cheap, because like all the people in the middle were not there and were not taking up space. And so you could rent like a flat for something like, I don't know, 150 marks a month, like a super huge flat. And that's why people like Edgar, Klaus Schulze, Manuel Göttingen, like all these famous people, that's why they all came to Berlin, and why it was possible to be so creative there and to develop all these ideas, because there was no economic pressure. I mean, if you move to Berlin now, for 250 or 150 marks, you would not even get a parking space, forget it. So if I was, let's say, if I was like a young Edgar or a young Klaus Schulze today, I could probably still move to Berlin, but I certainly wouldn't be in an environment there where I could just like freely develop ideas and try new things. I'd constantly have to have at the back of my mind the economic pressure of like paying the rent, and surviving in a city, which is a lot tougher. And obviously that goes for all major cities, New York, London, like none of these cities, everyone's just pushing into the cities, and the city generally is not like a space anymore where you can go as a young person to experiment and to try things and also to fail. If you go to the city in our times, you have to be very determined, very driven, and you have to make sure that you earn enough money that you can sustain that lifestyle.
London, obviously, where you are, Ulrich, is very, very expensive to begin with, and then I don't know if Ulrich, you have kids or family, but in the case of Jonas have a little two kids, right? So it's a difficult decision. Well, should I be a musician? Should I not be? I want to get married, whatever. Can I make enough money for my mom, for my family to survive, or pick a different profession, whatever? It's always that. For me, as like I mentioned at the beginning, I have done okay in my life. I'm an engineer and did a couple of master degrees and do other stuff. So I did save enough to put this radio together and to interview great musicians, you guys. I don't make any money off the radios. I don't play any instrument. I don't know how to read music, and so it is my passion is the consumer, listening to great artists that like yourself, man. And I also like Ulrich that you mentioned Klaus Schulze. Klaus Schulze, I want to try to interview him, and he's not in very good health, so it would never.
Yeah, it hasn't been for a while.
Hasn't been for a while. I talked to a couple of people, and with Manuel Goshin, I'm trying to work out a time where we can do an interview as well. So it's a lot of great musicians. Those people. All right, of course, and the famous what's called E2 E4 album that he has done.
I'd love to hear a Manuel King interview. I'd love to hear that. So I think you should do that.
Well, I'm waiting. I sent an email. He's out of Berlin at the moment, and hopefully the person who manage all the emails and stuff like that, he told me I need to ping him in a couple of weeks. And it's another person that definitely I want to interview from Tangerine Dream, Yoshiko. I think Yoshiko doesn't speak English that well, so she told me I would need the kind of the question ahead of time, so she can use a translator and be prepared, and also Paul Frick also, and Jerome. I pinged Jerome. Hopefully he will get back to me. And so I want to interview everybody, man. And I have interviewed, if you look to the radio, all so I speak German musicians from the 70s and 80s, and there's a lot of very good artists out there, man. And electronic music people. Very well. Well, thank you very much, Jonas, Ulrich. Definitely, I will send you separate email to you guys because I'm very interested in buying some of your music, and definitely Jonas for the catalog. I want to get a copy of everything that you
of course, yeah. Just send me your address, and I'll see what I have here.
And then the same with you, Ulrich. I'm trying to get a hold of the early work that you did when you were 18 years old. I think the Police in Car with Headphone. And the hair. That stuff is not anywhere, man. I need to.
That's a classic.
Yeah. You were. I think Ulrich was.
I think I have a copy somewhere.
Man, I cannot find the stuff. I look at Amazon, I look at eBay. They're not, maybe this cogs I can find somewhere. But hopefully, we can do an interview, version 2 of this interview. We can touchable topic, and I would love to one day, you know, see you playing live. You, Jonas, well, if I'm happy to be in Denmark, definitely I will let you know. And Ulrich, if you are in London in the fall, definitely will, you know, take you out to dinner. We can, you know, we can get some German beer as well in London, man. Go for a couple of beers.
I mean, to be honest with you, I'm really hoping to tour in the US again at some point. That's something I'd really like to do. So.
That would be great, man.
Fingers crossed.
All right, well, great. Thank you very much, guys, for your time. I will send you a link with the interview, and I'm, you know, looking forward to hearing from you back, and then maybe we can do another reunion down the road. You know.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, man. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Ciao.